That works fairly well. And then, like, again, you don't have to worry about your big luggage. It's all in your room.
That's true. That's true.
Just bring.
All right, inshallah ta'ala, we'll begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم ينفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزد علما كريم رب العالمين. اللهم نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء لكل داء آمين رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah. Inshallah ta'ala. Inshallah ta'ala, all of you are doing well online or here in the room, in the class. Alhamdulillah. No problem. We are continuing on the fourth session here on promised laws, the story of Bani Isra'il. Going over their story, obviously this is a big part of the Quran. So the more you learn about it, the better you understand the Quran in general. So we're just going to do a quick review. We had a week off because of the Labor Day weekend. So the quick review of going over what we did last time. So we talked about Bani Isra'il rejecting Musa alayhi salam's request to enter the land of the Holy Land, Al-Muqaddasa. So Palestine, Jerusalem, that area there. They didn't want to fight. For 40 years, they were forbidden to go into that land. We talked about why 40 years. We talked about it's usually time that a new generation will come into play after 40 years. The young ones become, more of adult. Their punishment was to wander for 40 years with no direction. So we talked about how they will wander in the land and they'll end up in the same place every night or every morning again. So quite frustrating for them. Of course, that's a big punishment that they're enduring because of their disobedience to the Prophet. But even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him shade, right? Ghamam, wal manna, wa salwa, right, was sent down upon them. So that a cloud that came over them, protect them from the sun. They're in the desert. Manna and salwa, we talked about either truffles or honey and these different type of things that were sent down for them to eat free of, right? So they're still getting that blessing. But then they complain, right? Lan nasbir ala ta'amin wahid, right? That we cannot have patience over one type of food. Give us something else. We want lentils, onions, and all these different things that they started asking for. That Musa alayhi salam said, would you trade something that's better for something that's worse, right? And so he was a little frustrated with them. 12 springs were given to them. So Musa alayhi salam had a stone, a rock, a boulder that they will carry with them everywhere they go. They'll put on an animal, wherever they stopped, he'll hit it with his staff. 12 springs will pop out from different directions. However that was done, if you were there, you would have saw it. That would have been an amazing scene to see. Not just 12 for every single tribe. And so they're getting water. So they got manna, salwa, water, shade. They're getting, taken care of. They're commanded to slaughter a cow. That's what we kind of left off on because there was a murder that happened amongst the people. And so that was their way to solve it, is to find a cow, slaughter it, take a piece of that cow, hit the dead person with it. The dead person came out alive, said, this man killed me. And then that person died and went back, died again, right? Once again, a little bit strange, obviously, by just hearing that story. That's what happened there. Musa alayhi salam was questioned multiple times about what type of cow, or what color is the cow, right? They didn't want to listen to their prophet. And then we ended off with them changing the word of repentance when entering the Holy Land. So after Musa alayhi salam passed away, Yusha ibn Nun alayhi salam, or Joshua, was their next prophet, and he was trying to get them to go into the land. They did, but they entered it in a disrespectful manner. They started scooting on their rear ends and changing the word hitta, which means repentance, to hintha, which means like grains or barley or wheat, just to kind of mock their prophet. So that's what we kind of left on. We have our disobedience chapter, right? So kind of all the different things that they have been doing wrong to their prophets, asking Musa alayhi salam to make an idol for them, worshiping golden calf, wanted to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before accepting the Torah, saying we hear and we disobey. When they were told to take the covenant, the mithaq, right? They said, we're just going to disobey it. Accusing Musa alayhi salam of killing his brother, not following the commandment to fight. We just spoke about that. Not satisfied with the food they received, excessive questioning about slaughtering the cow, not saying what they're supposed to say when they enter Jerusalem. So this is it's racking up now. We have 9 things so far. There probably was more that we just keep it there. All right, so now they are now with in the lands of, understand, Jericho, around that area there, okay? And so what's understood there, and this is kind of jumping a little bit ahead of time, is that when they went into the lands with Yusha alayhi salam, or with Joshua, they end up conquering different areas within Palestine, okay, where the Canaanites were at. And it's mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Judges, and that you know, they did it in different ways, and they were conquered, and then they themselves were conquered, back and forth. They were going back and forth, if you will. And so now they were told to go into the lands of deeper into Palestine, if you understand. Okay, Jericho is more on the borderline of like present day Jordan and the Jordan River area. Okay, so going to Jerusalem and other places, if you will. At this time, what's understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make it known what prophet was there. This is all about Surah Baqarah right here, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did you see, Alam tara ila mali min Bani Isra'il min ba'di Musa? Did you see a group of individuals or leaders from the children of Israel after the time of Musa alayhi salam, when they said to their prophet? So Allah says they said to their prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say who their prophet was. So there's a little bit of understanding who their prophet was. So some people say that there was a prophet named Shamuel or Shamuel, which is Samuel in biblical terms, if you will. But nonetheless, so this is where we're at time. So let's understand that Yusha alayhi salam, Joshua is gone now. This new prophet is there, okay? They're requested to go a little bit deeper into Palestine and Jerusalem and so forth, okay? They're in still the lands of Palestine, but they're telling them to go a little bit deeper. So they said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, did you not see a group of the children of Israel after the time of Musa when they said to their prophet, appoint for us a king so that we may fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so here that they're told once again to fight again. If you guys remember what happened when Musa alayhi salam told them to fight, what happened? They said what? You and your Lord. Anta wa rabbuka faqatila. So you and your Lord will fight. Nahnu hauna qa'idun. We're sitting here, we're not going to move. What happened to them? They got forbidden from the land for 40 years. Now a new generation comes. Remember 40 years, you said a new generation will come, everything will be good. New set of people, they learn their lesson. Same thing. They're told to fight again to the new prophet. And what do they say? We're not going to go. We want a king. We want a leader, right? A military general before we go fight. So we're not going to listen to our prophet. We're not going to go fight. Why don't you give us a military leader first? Okay. So their prophet says, like I said, it could be Samuel, which is their prophet at this time. He said, is it likely that fighting is enjoined upon you, that you would not fight? He's so confused now. He said, during the time of Islam, you guys didn't do it. Now in my time, and you guys are doing the same thing again? Like, you really going to do this? That I'm telling you to fight, and that you're not going to fight? You're putting another condition again, right? What do they say after that? Qalu, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with us that we would fight while we have been driven away from our homes and our sons? Let me depict this, what's happening here. When they're in the lands of Jericho and they're conquering little areas there, the Canaanites that were there at that time, or the Amalika, or the Amalekites, were still taking over some of the cities they conquered. And what's understood is that they destroyed their houses and took their children and enslaved them. Okay, so that's why they're saying here now, we don't want to go fight because our children have been taken away. We conquered some lands, and then they were reconquered away from us, and they took our homes away. So guess what? We don't want to fight again. Like, we want a king, we want a general to help us out. Okay, that's what they're asking for now. Okay, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but when fighting was enjoined upon them, they turned away. Tawallu. They turned away, except for qalilun minhum, except for a little from them, and Allah is aware of the unjust. Okay, so once again, the Prophet said, okay, you are commanded to fight, go. They just stood there and said, no, we're waiting for a king. We want a commander. Only some of them went. Okay, so what did their prophet say? The prophet said to him, guess what? Okay, Allah is going to accept your requests, right? So he says that Allah has appointed for you Talut, Saul, which is the biblical term of the word Talut, as a king for you, right? So there you go. You guys got your king. Okay, so hopefully you people are happy. What are they going to say? If you've been taking this class, you can almost guess what's going to happen already. Okay. What did they say? They said, how can he have kingship over us? Right? That how can he have a kingship over us when we are more entitled to it than him? And he hasn't been giving any, like, he's not like a rich person. Okay. What's understood there is that the kings of the children of Israel came from one of the tribes of the 12. Does anyone know which tribe that is? Tribe of Judah. Okay. So that's where their kings came from, where their leaders came from. Okay. So when they appointed Talut, he was from another tribe. So when they appointed him, they said, what? Even though he's from Bani Isra'il, like, I mean, come on, like, you guys all one brothers and cousins and so forth. They said, no. How are you appointing him over us when he's not from the tribes that usually our kings come from? And he's not like a rich person. Like, he looks like the poor. You know what I mean? We're not going to follow him. So once again, they're complaining. They asked for a king, they got a king. Now they're complaining once again. Then they said, what? Then the prophet said, Allah has chosen him over you, and he has increased them in knowledge, ilm, and physique. Jism, yani built, like he's strong, like that's what you need in a battle. Allah gives his kinship whoever he wills, and he's all embracing, all knowing. So they said, like, the prophet said, no, we're not changing it up anymore. Just take him as a prophet. Guess what? What do you think they did? You think they took him as a prophet? No. That's pretty much the storyline of this whole class. You can almost shake your head the whole class and you'll probably be right, honestly, what's going on. So they didn't want to take him, okay? So the prophet at the time is mentioned by the tafsir books of the Shemuel or Samuel, Jalut, Goliath, and the Amalekites, the people that's called Amaleka, the people that were there, captured their homes, enslaved their children in previous encounters. So that's why they didn't want to fight them again. Talut, Saul, was from the tribe of Bani Israel, which deemed not as honored as the tribe of Judah, where their leaders usually came from. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentioned this in his tafsir. The tabut, and I want you to go over this thing called the tabut. I mean, anytime I put pictures here in this class, it's just to have an idea. There's no way we could say that's how the tabut looks like. Okay, this is just for you guys to have a little picture in your head. What is the tabut? The tabut is called the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, maybe you heard that term before, right? The Ark of the Covenant, or the tabut, was something that was like a chest or something like that, where the staff of Musa alayhi salam was kept in, pieces of the Torah, which is those tablets, remember the tablets? And they said there was other things in there, like the clothes of Harun and some other stuff that was in there. What it did, it brought like barakah to them. So when they would pick it up and they'll bring it to the battlefield, it will help them with their victory. How or what? It just brought victory to them. Okay. And one of the battles, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, they stole it. Okay. They brought it to the battlefield. They lost. They took it from them and they stole it. So they lost it. Okay. So they lost the tablets. Who knows who could change it? The staff of Musa alayhi salam is in there. Other things are in there. Okay. So what happened is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on this verses up here, which I probably should include in the slide earlier, but couldn't fit. Their prophet says to them, the sign of his kingship, right? You guys want a king. Talut is your king. They said, we're not going to accept him. He's not wealthy, and he's not from the tribe that we usually from. So they said, you know what? The sign of him being a king over you is that the Ark of the Covenant, the tabut, shall return to you. Okay. And when it returns to you, that is a sign that he is really a king. Just believe me. Just take him, right? You will see it carried by angels. So these angels came, picked it up, and brought it over. So remember, they lost it, right? So the angels stole it back from the people, or rightfully took it back from whoever had it, brought it over. Imagine that you saw angels in the first place, brought the tabut and put it back to them. Therein it was tranquility, sakina. That when they had it with them, they felt at ease. They weren't anxious that they're going to lose the battle. And the remains of the house of Musa and the house of Harun alayhi salam that he had left. Surely it is a sign for you if you are believers. So when they got the tabut, then they said, okay, we'll take Talut, Saul, as our king now. Okay. So now they're finally going to believe in him only because they saw the tabut come back and back to them. Okay. So that's kind of like where we are right now. Okay. So now they said, okay, Saul, Talut, you're our king. Now what does the king do? He's like, okay, let's go. We're supposed to go fight. We're supposed to take over the lands of Palestine and these lands of Canaan, if you will. So Talut set out with his troops. So now he got his army. Okay. And he said, Allah is going to test you by a river. Some people say this is the River Jordan, which is pretty much the borderline between present day Palestine and the country Jordan. Okay. So there's a river here. We're going to cross it. Okay. Allah is going to test you with this river. So whoever drinks from it is not from me. You're not from my army. You're going to be kicked out. Okay. And whoever does not taste from it is from my army. We're going to include you. Okay. Except those who take a scoop of it with their hand. You're like, what's going on here? Okay. Is this a test for them that, hey, I'm your king. I'm not going to go to a battlefield right now. First of all, you guys didn't accept me until you saw the taboo. I don't trust you guys. So here's your test. If whoever listens to me and doesn't drink from the river, then I know that I can at least have some type of repertoire with them. Okay. And so I could trust them. So this was a test that Allah gave them to see who's obedient to their king, who's not obedient to the king. You're about to go to war. You have to make sure that the people are going to listen to you, or else it's going to be a bad encounter. Look what Allah says. And they drank from it except a few. Like I said, you could almost guess that again. They're not going to listen to the king. They went to the river. Everyone just started to keep on drinking. They don't care what. You see that as a norm. When it comes to prophets, they don't really have much respect to them and kings. It's not something that in their nature. So they drank from it except a few. So when he crossed it, Talut, Saul, he and those who believed in him said, we have no power against Jalut and his forces. So now he's only left, some say 315 people left out of like thousands that left. So he only has like 300 left. When they crossed over and they saw Goliath, his name's Goliath because he's super big, right? And when they saw how big the army is, and they had well prepared, weapons, they said, "What? We have no power over this army. We're going to lose. Like it's going to be a bad time." Okay. Those who are sure that they will meet their Lord said. So from this group, there's a smaller group that says that we're definitely going to meet Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Basically, they're saying we're going to be asking for Allah Subhanahu wa Taala if we're going to fight them or not. So guess what? We're going to do this. They said, how often has a small group party vanquished, defeated a big army by the host of the permission of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala? After October 7th, I gave a khutbah and I mentioned the same ayah, right? That this is pretty much the brothers and sisters in Gaza compared to the forces of Israel, right now, right? That how many times has a small army defeated a big army by the permission of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala? And Allah is with the Sabirin. Okay. Some said that this was Dawood alayhi salam and his small crew that he had. That they were like, let's go. Right? Allah's telling us to go, it's going to be a great time. Let's go. We're not going to back down, even though how great Goliath, Jalut, and his army looks like. Okay. So this is where we're at right now. Everyone good? Following?
Just one quick question. I guess you might go into here. So is Dawood alayhi salam living at the same time as Saul?
Saul, yeah. So Talut is the king. The prophet is what's understood Samuel. Okay. Or Samuel, right?
And
Dawood is, it's like they say, the 16-year-old boy in the army under the leadership of Talut, Saul. Yeah. It's a little kid, but he's youth are kind of, they don't really think, they just go. So they're like, all right, let's go. Let's get into this fight. Let's go. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's also the Baqarah right here. We're just reading ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and when they faced Jalut and his troops, they said, our Lord, Rabbana afriq alayna sabran wa thabbit aqdamana wansurna liqawmil kafirin. Or our Lord, pour endurance over us and make us feet firm. Put patience upon us and make our feet firm that we're not going to run back. We're not going to turn away from the battlefield. We're going to stay there and we're going to keep on pushing. Help us against the disbelieving people. Okay. So they defeated them by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And David, killed Jalut, killed Goliath. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really doesn't talk about a slingshot. He doesn't talk about hitting him with a rock. We know that from biblical stories and other things. So if it did happen that way, alhamdulillah. If it was something else, whatever. It really doesn't matter too much. But I might as well give you the picture of the slingshot on the rock, right? Everyone kind of likes that. And Allah gave him kingdom. Now this is a big part here. This is the first time ever Bani Isra'il is now having a kingdom. Okay, this is what they want. This is the temple that they're talking about today. Okay, really it's called a masjid. They changed the word to temple. Okay, so Allah gave Dawood alayhi salam kingdom and wisdom, meaning that he became a prophet. That's usually in time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he gave someone wisdom to Yusuf alayhi salam and so forth, other prophets, meaning that they became a prophet, and taught him what he willed. Had Allah not been pushing back some people by means of others, the earth would have been spoiled, but Allah is all great, gracious to all of the worlds. This is a very important verse here. A lot of us don't like fighting. Nobody ever wants to fight. Everyone wants to be in the battlefield. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that sometimes you're going to have to be out there. But if you don't push other people back, then the world will just be chaotic, right? You have to challenge those who are oppressors and tyrants, right? They have to be checked, if you will, okay? Key thing is here that Allah gave who? Dawood kingship. Not who? Talut, okay? Talut is their king, right? He's the leader of the army. But Allah is saying that the kingship was given to Dawood alayhi salam, okay? You go and think that's going to be what? A little bit of what? Rivalry there. That, hey, I'm Talut, I'm kind of the king here. But everyone's going to celebrate who? Dawood alayhi salam. Because what? He's a prophet, and also that he's the one that took down Goliath. He's kind of the superstar right now, right? So a lot of people are going to try to follow his camp. So you can kind of see some things that are building here. After this, in the rest of our class, we're going to unfortunately depart from the Quran a little bit now. Because after Dawood alayhi salam comes in the picture and takes over kingship, and after that, Sulaiman alayhi salam, in the Quran, we really don't have much detail about what's going on with Bani Isra'il. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Dawood alayhi salam, and not in very long terms, and talks about Sulaiman alayhi salam, but not in very long terms. There's good information there. But what's happening to the people? Are they questioning Dawood? Are they questioning Sulaiman alayhi salam? Are they worshiping other gods? What are they doing? We don't really know. There's not really much information on that. You're going to have to go to history books to find out what's going on with Bani Isra'il. And when we talk about history books, there's only really one book that's there that tells you about what's going on at that time, and that is the Bible. Okay, that's pretty much what you have to go to. Archaeologists have come in and they found pottery with writings on it, and then that helps us also. But those are the only two things we really have to go to. So we really have to only touch those sources, if you will. But we'll talk about Dawood alayhi salam a little bit. So it's mentioned that Talut offered his daughter in marriage. This is really all biblical stuff here. This is not from Quran, it's not from Hadith. I always want to just make that distinguished here. But it's mentioned that Talut offered his daughter in marriage to whoever will defeat Jalut. Okay? And so Dawood did it. And so guess what? He gets to marry the daughter of Talut. You would think that makes them very close together. And it kind of does. Okay. Nobody wanted to take a challenge except Dawood alayhi salam. Dawood alayhi salam struck Jalut, Goliath, in the head, killed him, married his daughter, Talut's daughter. Talut becomes the king of Bani Isra'il. The first kingdom. Is there a window open? I feel like it's so loud now. Is it just that? Oh, okay. Okay, I heard kids. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all like they're eating.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's okay. Alhamdulillah. Talut becomes the king of Bani Israel's first kingdom in 1090 now. Right, we're talking about BCE, right before Isa alayhi salam shows up in the picture. Okay, it mentioned that Talut passed away around 1004. Divisions and discord ensued afterwards. Right, I feel like this windows are open. You want to see if any of these windows open? Sorry. Do you see if any of the windows over here are open? Right. Get a little bit of noise. Oh wow! I was trying to blame the kids just out of respect. Okay. So Talut passed away around 104. So what basically leaves Dawood alayhi salam to take the reign. Guess what? Talut has a son. So there comes a little issue there too. Okay. Division, discord, inserts. Some follow Talut's son, and others follow Dawood alayhi salam.
So Dawood got that kingship and wisdom at age of 16?
Right at that time, yeah. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it right there after he defeated Jalut Goliath. What's understood is that it happens right there, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't really tell, like, he doesn't say X amount of years later he got it. So what's understood that he got it around that time. Yeah.
Wait, so when it says like 16, that's obviously not in the Quran.
No, it's not. This is all biblical stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, he could have been a lot older. I mean, it's also traditionally in the Bible it mentioned that he was a child. 16 is, I guess, yeah, somewhat of an adult, yeah.
Do we know from which of the 12 tribes Dawood was?
He's from Judah. Yeah, he's from that Judah tribe. So they're much more happier with him. Yeah. So that's a good.
Sulaiman also is from the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, Suleiman is Dawood Islam's son. So that kind of works together, right? Some say that Dawood Islam and Musa Islam was roughly 1,000 years apart. That gives us a little bit of a reference, right, of what kind of how far along afterwards. Remember, Musa Islam says, go into the land, they reject him. Now it takes almost 1,000 years later for them to finally enter in. Of course, they had to wander in the land for 40 years, but then they kind of entered Jericho, but then they didn't enter Palestine. I mean, Jerusalem and other deeper parts of Palestine yet. So 1,000 years is a lot, if you will, from that time. Okay. So there's this understanding that from the time of Talut, Saul, his son, Dawood alayhi salam, and Suleiman alayhi salam, there's something called the United Kingdom, not the United Kingdom of England, but the British, but United Kingdom of Israel. Okay. This is also debated. That did they have one kingdom, or was it two separate kingdoms? Okay, I'm going to explain that in a bit. Okay, so what's understood here that they had all this. Try to get my mouse. Where is it at? There it goes. So they had all this land. So it says David's kingdom, Dawood's son's kingdom, at the end of his reign. So this green was at the time of all his reign. This inner part here is what, after the defeating Goliath, that he took over here. Okay. Another point to understand here, the place called Philistia, that is where we call modern day Palestine. It's where the name Palestine comes from. I'm going to go in a little bit where the name Palestine comes from and who are those people and so forth. Okay. So that's where Gaza is, around this area here. Okay. They don't conquer that area, which is very interesting. It almost seems like that area never gets conquered. It's really, really historical what's going on today. It's like the Bani Isra'il and Israel never, ever had control of that area ever in their history. Okay. So they conquered this whole this land here from all the way up past Syria, will be modern day Syria, if you will, and all the way down a little bit in the Sinai Peninsula. Okay. This is where the whole kingdom was. So it's understood, if you go, like I said, this is all history books, nothing Quran and Sunnah here, that they had about 5 kings, if you will. Talut, he died around 1010. His son, Dawood alayhi salam, Suleiman alayhi salam, and Suleiman's son, they said around 930. Okay. Between Dawood and Suleiman alayhi salam, I believe it's only 70 years of reign, or 70 or 890 or something like that. It wasn't a very long time at all that they actually had you might say a 70 is a long time, that a kingdom, if you will, a prophetic kingdom, if you will. Okay. So this is the area that's now that their first ever kingdom for the Jewish people, or at least for the Bani Isra'il, if you will. Okay. A little bit of understanding who was living in this land before they got in there, which is understood, right? Of course, the Jews say this is our land and so forth, but they're definitely not the first people to live in this land, and they're more migrants into the land than anything else, okay, historically. Okay. So there's the Nephtalians, or Natufians. They're the ones that understand that historically, after Nuh alayhi salam and the flood, these are the first people that came in the land after the flood. Okay. Some people say that they were actually descendants from the son of Nuh alayhi salam, Sam. That's where they come. That's the word Semites come from, right? So Nuh alayhi salam had a son named Ham, Sam. What was the third one? I'm forgetting. So this is where the word Semites come from, because Jewish people, as they say, or Bani Isra'il, comes from Sam. So does Arabs. So Arabs are Semites also. If you want to go back to that term, where they call Semites from, it's all from the son of Sam, of Nuh alayhi salam's son Sam. So when the people say you guys are anti-Semite, well, if you don't like the Palestinians or you're racist against them, you're anti-Semite also, technically, right? So.
Yeah, but like I have a question. I guess this is sort of unrelated, but like why is it that they just kind of hijacked the word and then Arabs never claimed it? It's kind of strange that like most of the vendor people along we never claimed that word.
Yeah, well, they want to. Yeah. I think they claimed it for obviously it's good publicity for them. You know, maybe they jumped on the boat quicker than Arabs would do it. I mean, it's not a Muslim thing; it's an Arab thing, right? And they just use that term though. But if no one really knows where that term comes from.
And also the funny thing is they're not even Semitic because the modern Jews are actually like converts. They're Europeans when you actually look at that. That's why in Israel you're not allowed to get a DNA test. It's actually banned.
Yeah. We'll get into that. It's true.
It's hilarious.
Something called Ashkenazi Jews.
Yeah.
Which they don't like you when you bring up that term. But anyhow, yeah, that's a lot of them from like Polish and Russian different backgrounds. It's really interesting. Okay. Then there's called the Canaanites, which is this whole area is called Canaan. Even the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes from what's understood Babylon or right, when he got thrown into the fire. If you guys remember the story, and then he left, right? And he goes in the lands of Palestine. That land is called Canaan. That's like the first name of that land, if you will. Okay, Canaanites. The Canaanites are really, honestly, a group of a bunch of different people that were living in this land. Okay, there's the Jebusites and so forth, and a bunch of other people. You can read the names in there. It's kind of small, but this whole area is called Canaanites. So even Goliath is called a Canaanite. Some people call it Amlika or the Amalekites, because Amalekites was one of the tribes within this land here, if you will. Okay, so Bani Isra'il is coming in here to the land of Canaan. That land was never called the land of Israel. Okay, they're Israel because of their Yaqub alayhi salam's name, but the land itself is not called Israel at all. It's called Canaan, if you will. Okay, and then there's something called the Balistis. So that is where this area, that's where the name Palestine comes from. So Baal was a term that means God. Okay, it literally means God. And so even in the Bible, it says, don't worship other Baals, other gods other than the God, if you will. And so this area here was named Baal. Historically, people from the Mediterranean islands called Crete and Cyprus and this other place there, because of historically it's because of famine and so forth, they came over here and they settled in this land here, right? And they became known as the Philistines, right, or Philistinia, right? And that's where the name Palestine comes from. Okay, historically, they later on from this land here mixed in with the Canaanites and married with them and so forth. I guess somehow that name became the dominant name of that area later on. Okay, so that's where originally that name comes from, the word Palestine, because it came from the word Balistis, but then the P turned in there and started calling it, Palestine, if you will. Okay, and so forth. So you have all these people that are living there. So now, Talut, Saul, and his people are now coming in there, Dawood alayhi salam, and so forth. So they have this whole area here, the kingdom of Israel. They call them that, right? Because they're from Bani Isra'il, makes sense, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Dawood alayhi salam, where he said that we strengthened him his kingdom, right? And we gave him wisdom and clear judgment. So we're talking about 1004 before Jesus, peace upon him, is born, okay? So Allah, and they mentioned in the books here that he married the daughter of Talut, of Saul. There was a difference of opinions if there were two nations, one up to the north and one to the south. Why did I bring that up for? Because the clan of Judah end up populating the south. And all the other clans, all the other tribes, okay, remember there's 12, okay, 10 of them were more to the north. They just end up going to the north. 2 of them stayed in the south. That is the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Binyamin, okay, right, which is, Yusuf alayhi salam's brother, okay, that are into the south here. They stayed in this area here. Somehow they just kind of end up doing that. Even though the 12 tribes, they still have issues amongst each other, right? They don't, that's just how brothers kind of have sometimes. Okay. Saul governed Jerusalem and the area around it. In 1000 BC, there was a battle between Dawood alayhi salam and Talut's son. Okay, this is all biblical information here. Okay, there was some rivalry that was going on. Talut's son, it's understood in the history books in the Bible, didn't want Dawood alayhi salam to kind of take over the kingship and was trying to get him killed. Okay, that's what's understood there in the books. Okay, so it ended up being a battle between them, and then his son got defeated. So now Dawood alayhi salam is the last one to stay there. Okay, let's understand that the Jebusites, the ones that are in Jerusalem, like Jerusalem, okay, Quds, if you will, right? They're in that area there. Dawood alayhi salam defeats them, and now he takes over that area there. And that's what we call the Temple Mount, or Masjid Aqsa is at that area. So Dawood alayhi salam starts building his kingdom there. Okay, so this becomes what Masjid Aqsa is. I mean, Masjid Aqsa was actually built a long time ago. Okay, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that said that Masjid Haram was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam, and then 40 years later, Masjid Aqsa was built. Okay, what's understood that Ibrahim alayhi salam, of course, was still alive at that time. So he built that also there. Now, of course, that area was lost. Different Canaanites came in, other people came in. And so, but Dawood alayhi salam is now resurrecting that area and building his kingdom over it now, if you will, right? His palace or the masjid, his mihrab, right? The masjid that he will pray in. Okay. So Dawood alayhi salam took over the land of Jerusalem and made it his capital. 30,000 men guarded his mihrab, right? The place that he would pray. His kingdom was wealthy and very, very strong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said supported him. There's a story in the Quran. I'm not bringing it up here because I don't want the story to be about the prophets. I want to be the story be about Bani Isra'il. But there's a story in the Quran that talks about when Dawood alayhi salam was praying in his mihrab. Mihrab is like the front of the masjid area where like the imam prays at, you could say, if you will. And two people jump over the fence and come to him while he's praying. And he gets quite scared. He's like, who are you guys? How did you guys get through 30,000 people guarding my mihrab? Right? And they said, one said, this is my brother. He has 99 sheep. I have one sheep, and he wants to take my sheep from me. Okay? So make a decision between us. Dawood alayhi salam says, give back, don't take his sheep. Right? He only has one. Why are you taking his sheep? And then Allah corrects them and saying, what? You should have listened to both parties. You only listened to one party. If one guy says, he has 99 sheep, I only have one, and it's my brother trying to take one away from him, you would think that, oh my God, this is a bad guy. You know, why would you do that for to your own brother? Dawood alayhi salam quickly judges against the guy who has one, but he had a right to keep it. And then those two people disappeared. There were angels actually that came over. It was a test for Dawood alayhi salam, right? But that's a little story on his end. But it was talking about more that he had this mihrab. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about Dawood alayhi salam and his kingdom, that we certainly gave Dawood from us bounty. And we said, oh, mountains, repeat our praise with them, and birds. So it's mentioned that Dawood alayhi salam had a very beautiful voice. When he would recite the Psalms, and we'll get to the Psalms of Zabur in a bit, that the birds and the mountains will echo those sounds, okay? And people will gather around just to listen to him, or just to see him, okay? And we made palatable for him iron. Okay. You see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to do here? He gave him a kingdom, and guess what? People are going to try and take your kingdom. They're going to fight you. What do you need? You need armor. Okay, that's one thing. You just have to do it. Okay, peace treaty is not always going to work. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him iron that he was able to mold it and make full coats of mail. It's called chain mail. It's like something you put over there. If a sword hits it, it's not going to go through that. Right? It's like an iron shirt that you're wearing. And calculate the position of the links and work for you the righteousness indeed of what you do, and I'm all seeing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was able to give him iron. He was able to just mold it whatever he would, make swords, make armor to protect his kingdom. So that's something that Allah is trying to preserve this kingdom, if you will. This gave Dawood and some army advantage over their enemies. Okay, so a blessing that he had. He was also given the Zabur, okay, the Psalms, if you will. And to Dawood alayhi salam, we gave him the Psalms. I mentioned Surah Nisa. So the Psalms literally means, the Zabur literally means the word written. Okay, so the written chapters that came down to him. Currently in the Bible, there's 150 chapters in there. There's no rulings in it, no haram, halal. It's all wisdom about dealing with people, mannerism, and so forth. Okay, and he would recite it. I mentioned, like we mentioned before, that the animals and the trees and the mountains will all sing that praise with them, and people will gather around. Okay, so once again, Bani Isra'il doesn't mention that here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even talk about Bani Isra'il anymore, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about them so much about Musa alayhi salam, conversation with them. Allah flips the script now and doesn't really even mention what Bani Israel is doing. Doesn't mention that they're reciting with him. Doesn't mention that they're supporting him. Doesn't mention that they're obeying him at all. All the conversations about Dawood alayhi salam, therefore Sulaiman alayhi salam afterwards. Okay, and so here's this talking about him, right? But Bani Isra'il is witnessing all this. They're getting another scripture. They're getting armor, that's made for them. Hopefully, they'll see that as a sign. You can already guess what they're going to do. Sulaiman alayhi salam, Dawood alayhi salam passes away. Doesn't really mention in the Quran how he passed away. If it was a war or anything like that. Just mentioned that he had a son named Sulaiman alayhi salam, right? His kingdom starts around 963. Did I put the time of Dawood alayhi salam in here? No, I did not. Okay. 103 around there, if you will. So it's about 70 years later on, right? Then, or 40 years on, sorry, around there, if you will. Wasn't very long, right? Sulaiman alayhi salam comes to the king, obviously being the son of Dawood alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that my Lord, Sulaiman alayhi salam makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, my Lord, forgive me and grant me a kingdom such that will not belong to anyone after me. Basically, give me a kingdom that no one will ever have the likes of ever. Okay. Should a prophet make a dua like that? Yes, if you're trying to command good or forbid evil, then that's a good dua to make, obviously. If you're spreading corruption, then obviously that's not a good dua to make. He's a prophet, so he's not going to do that. So he said, give me a kingdom that had never been seen before, right? So I could dominate, the word of Allah could spread, and people will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we subjected to him the wind by his command. So you could tell the wind to blow this way or that way, defeat his enemies with it, and so forth, wherever he directed. And we also, the devils, the jinn, and every builder and diver. So he was able to control the jinn to make them build his palace, which is understand to be in this area here, this whole area here. And of course, it was a palace of Sulaiman alayhi salam, right? What the Jews call the Temple Mount. We call this Masjid Aqsa, right? This whole area here, maybe a little bit bigger. Who knows the exact dimensions, but at least it's in this area here, okay? And he just more renovated Masjid Aqsa, just made it more of a place of a big masjid, a place of worship, and also his capital of his kingdom, okay, where he ruled from and he controlled the affairs of the country. Okay. If you look here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he kind of controlled the wind, the animals, and the jinn. And the wind and the animals and the jinn was part of his army, the hudhud bird and so forth. Do you notice something here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't talk about who? Bani Isra'il, where are they? What are they doing? Allah talks about his army is what? Jinn and birds and wind. That you can see that, they're maybe not really participating very much or even helping at all, if you will. But Allah gives all the attention to who? Animals and wind and birds and jinn, right? There's no mention about what is Bani Israel even doing at all, which is an indication of, their worth to them or what they're actually doing in the kingdom itself, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also talked about Sulaiman alayhi salam. And to Solomon and Sulaiman alayhi salam, we subjected the wind. Its morning journey was a month. We travel a month just like that. And its afternoon journey was a month. And we made flow for him the spring of liquid copper. Dawood alayhi salam was able to mold, right, iron. He was able to mold copper. Once again, you need these things to help you protect your kingdom. And among the jinn of those who worked for him by the permission of his Lord, and whoever deviated among them from our command, we will make him taste the punishment of the blaze. So if the jinns would not listen to them, they will be punished. Okay, so they were subjected by Dawood alayhi salam. They couldn't do what they wanted to will, right? Once again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not talking about Bani Isra'il, that they helped him out, they helped build the palace, they supported him. Allah's talking about the jinn. The jinn's the one that's doing all the work. Okay. And we made them taste, and they made for him what he willed of elevated chambers. So this grand, big palace that's strong. Obviously, somebody attacks it, you want to make it strong. Bowls like reservoirs, okay? Stationary kettles. We said, work, O family of Dawood, in gratitude, shukra, be thankful to Allah. And few of my servants are grateful. Okay. I want you to pick up on this right here. It might not make much sense to you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the things he talks about here is that the jinn were helping them make big chambers, like big rooms, like a big palace. And bowls and and reservoirs and kettles. Okay. You might think, okay, well, why you mention that? You will see when their empire is about to fall, right? The Assyrians and the Babylonians are about to come and defeat them. One of the things that stays from them, and it's in the history books, is their bowls and kettles. You can know that it was from Bani Isra'il, from their kingdom, because it remained. And the Babylonians took that purposely because it was much more crafted and manufactured better than theirs. It's very interesting. It's even mentioned in the Bible and so forth, that's what the Babylonians took because it was this much more better. And look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like he mentions in the Quran, this is actually one of the things they gave. You might think, who cares about bowls? What's the point of that, right? But back in the day, that's something that's very helpful in terms of that. That's something that stayed. Okay. Talk a little bit about also what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about Bani Isra'il, about Sulaiman alayhi salam during his time, about sorcery, black magic. Okay, this is a little bit sometimes hard to understand here. So we'll read the ayat and we'll talk about it in a bit here. How much time do I have? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it's also Surah Baqarah also here, and they followed and said what the devils have recited during the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Okay, talk about the people. The people followed the devils, the shayateen, okay, the evil jinns. So there's jinns, and the evil ones are called shayateen. Okay, there could be good jinns, but what we understand, I know everyone's going to ask a question about jinns now. We don't want to get too off on a tangent here. Yes, they could be Muslim jinns, but it looks like from the Hadith and the Quran that a good majority of them are just all bad. You know what I mean? There look like there's some good ones out there, but it looks like they're probably the vast minority. Okay, for multiple reasons. So the people follow what the jinns have recited during the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam. It was not Sulaiman who disbelieved, but the devils disbelieved. I'm going to go into why that Allah is mentioning that. Teaching the people magic. When we say magic here, we're not talking about here's a card here and it's gone. That's not magic we're talking about here. We're talking about putting spells on people that now they're getting sick. They're having issues in their life. Okay, working with jinn, black magic type of stuff. We're not talking about illusions here. But teaching the people magic, that which was revealed to the two angels at Babylon, Harut and Marut. Allah really doesn't really mention much angels in the Quran by name, other than Jibreel and Mikael and so forth. But Allah talks about these two angels here. But the two angels did not teach anyone unless they said, we are a trial. So do not disbelieve. Do not practice what we're telling you. Now you might be a little more confused here. Why would the angels teach something and then say, don't do it? Okay. And yet they learn from them by which would cause separation between a man and his wife, break up marriages. Okay. But they do not harm anyone except by the permission of Allah. The jinns don't have power to do that. Allah's able them to do that because technically they have free will. Okay. And the people learn what harms them and does not benefit them. But the children of Israel certainly knew that whoever purchased that magic would not have anything in the hereafter. Now Allah mentions who? Bani Isra'il. Whole time we were talking about what? Wind, animals, and jinn. Now when we talk about something negative, guess who comes into play? Bani Isra'il. Okay, they want to learn that magic. They want to see what they could do. Okay, but the children of Israel certainly knew whatever purchase of the magic will not have in the hereafter any share. They're not going to go to Jannah. The wretched is that for which they have sold themselves, only if they knew. Okay, so the shayateen, you have to go to a little bit of understanding here. I'm going to take a little understanding that before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the shayateen there's jinns that fly and some jinns that don't fly, and they can do different type of things. Okay, so there's some shayateen that fly. They go up to the skies, not heaven, where the angels are getting information of what's going to happen. That Allah is telling them what is going to happen. My question to you: Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever tell angels what's going to happen? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever tell angels what's going to happen in the future?
He tells them like what to do or
Go make it rain right here, take this person's life. Is there anything that we know that alludes to that they know they were told a little bit what's happening in the future? What's also mentioned sometimes the Laylatul Qadr, that whatever is going to happen for the next year, the Qadr, which is not called power here, but it's called like what the matters are going to happen, are sent down on that night. Okay, so the angels have their schedule for the year coming up. They have the calendar. Take this person's life. This one's going to new baby. Make it rain over here. Do this. They're the workers. Angels are the workers, right? Allah to do everyone He wants, but as a being someone who's grand and so forth and majestic, angels do the work, if you will. Okay, so what's understand on the night of Laylatul Qadr, not only did the Quran come down on that night, but also one of the opinions are that the matters for the upcoming year will come up. Okay, whether this is happening on Laylatul Qadr or not, that the shayateen will go up and they will listen to what the angels are saying. Okay, however they do that, it's a whole nother realm. Me and you are not in that realm. We'll just take it, if you will. Okay, and so what they will do, they know that this might happen, so they'll go down and they'll talk to soothsayers, people who are want to be psychics and tell the future, and say, you know what, I know what's going to happen to this guy that's sitting in front of you. I could tell you, but usually jinn wants you to do something for them also. That's usually kind of weird stuff. Okay, they want to humiliate you, and it's not free information. Jinns, they always want, because remember, they envy us. They had to bow down to Adam alayhi salam. So they have an issue with human beings in general. Okay, so they tell these people, psychics and so forth, what's going to happen, but they usually want some type of gift or something to do for them. And there's a lot to say about that. So they used to go ahead and listen to all that and come back, if you will. Okay, so Shaitan used to listen to ascend to the skies and listen to the conversation of the angels. They used to convey that to the soothsayers, write down what they are being told in books. Most of the times they'll lie, because that's what they do in general, just so they can get the soothsayers to do what they want to do. At the time of Sulaiman, what he did, he heard about this. He heard about the angels as a test. We're telling the people, this is magic, but don't do it. That's a test. You might say, why would they even tell them in the first place? Well, that's how tests are. Okay, guys, right? Here's $50,000. I can give it to you guys. Let me see what you guys do about it. Like, no, don't give me. I'm gonna buy things I shouldn't buy. Okay, then no, it's a test. Let me see what you got. You're gonna donate, or you're gonna blow it on some type of purse or bag or some kind of silly thing, right? So same thing. Here's this magic. It's a test for you, just like crossing the river. The water's there. Only don't drink from it. Just a handful. People start drinking from it. Okay, see if you're gonna follow. So the angels were told them, do not do this. But guess what? They all started practicing it a lot of times. Sulaiman alayhi salam was understood from the tafsir of these ayats that he found out this was going on, and they wrote down in the book what's going to happen to so and so and so and so and so. So he has to control his kingdoms. What he does, he collects all those books and he takes out his workers to find out who has these stuff written down. He collects all of them, and guess what? He puts it under his throne, so nobody could take it there. When he kept it there, okay. After he passed away, guess what happens? The police is not there, right? We can do what we want. Oh, right? So people try to get those books and read it up again, okay? Which is an interesting study and research about Judaism and black magic and what type of ties they are. Of course, they will say like this is disbelief and it should have been done, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning something here, so we have some proof here.
But that information, I mean, according to the beliefs, only for 1 year, so it's already expired.
That, or I'm just talking about what happened in the Laylatul Qadr, but it could happen other times. So I was just trying to give you an example of this that does happen.
Is it true? I think I've also read that I'm not sure if this is how authentic this is, but amongst those books were also instructions on how to actually do sihr, like from when Harut and Marut brought down.
Yeah, if you look right here, it says what they learn. They learn what to cause separation between a man and wife.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's not just like, oh, this guy is going to get $100 tomorrow. Tell him this, watch, and he's going to believe like, oh my God, I got $100 tomorrow. You must be true. It's also to try to mess with people. That's really what law black magic is. And it's interesting. I'll stop on this note here because Dr. Siddiqui is going to be coming. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that Shaitan, Iblis, sits on a throne, a little throne, over water, and he gathers a shayateen in front of him. He says, "What did you do today?" So someone said, I did this bad thing. I did this bad thing. And Shaitan says, you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. And one Shaitan raised his hand and said, I caused a man and a woman to separate, a husband and wife to separate. The Prophet mentioned the hadith. Iblis says, come here and sit next to me. You did good. So it's one of the biggest things. It's also my marital advice to people who are married, right? That sometimes you have good spouses, mashallah. It's shaitan that comes and likes to whisper. And the spouses sometimes listen, right? Because they're angry at the moment and they're vulnerable, right? So it's not like your husband's the worst person in the world, your wife's the worst person in the world. They just got this shaitan got the best of them at that moment. Okay, which is great marital advice if you think about it at that time. But here, same thing here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us this is one thing that the shayateen were doing, right? It was practicing this and telling people to do these type of things, if you will. Okay. Maybe I'll give this last slide because this talks about the sorcery. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this stopped. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Jinn, where it says, and we have sought to reach the sky. The jinns are speaking here. We have sought to reach the skies, but we found it filled with powerful guards and burning flames. We used to sit therein in positions of hearing, but whoever listens now will find a burning flame, stars or meteors and these type of things, laying in wait for them. And we do not know, therefore, whether evil is intended for those on earth or whether the Lord intends from it. We don't know anymore. We used to know. We used to know the future, they're saying now, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that if you ever look at a night sky, we have light pollution here, but if you really go to a place where you can see a total night sky, it looks like the whole sky is full, every single centimeter has a star. It's almost like a force field, if you think about it, where the jinns can't get through anymore, right? So there's almost a star in every single spot in the sky, okay? Now that picture kind of shows you that, right? So subhanAllah, that's mentioned. Surah Mulk also mentions where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and certainly we adorn the lower sky with lamps, stars, and we made it missiles, rujur, right, for the shayateen, and we have prepared for them a chastisement and burning, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can't do that anymore, right? So the Prophet during his time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped it. Why did he choose that time? Allah is Alim and Hakim. He knows what's best and he knows what's most wise and when to do something, if you will. We'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to go in next, talking about a little bit about the end of Sulaiman alayhi salam, and what's going to happen is the breaking up of the kingdom. There's going to be a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom, kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. And we're going to see what happens to those of them. You can see kind of breaking down now, right? Within Bani Isra'il, they're fighting amongst each other. And then we're going to see how the Syrians and the Babylonians come in and take over there, and their kingdom falls. Okay, and why they thought their kingdom fell, if you will. So we'll get on to that next week, inshallah. It should be quite interesting and useful. Any questions or comments before we take it?
So there was no, is it common, I guess, opinion that there was no sihr that existed before the time of Sulaiman?
Oh, I think it is. This is more telling just an aspect of this one incident between Harut and Marut. Yeah, Allahu Allah. I would assume that probably was going on beforehand. Allahu Allah. Okay. Anyone who has a question?
Yeah, how many years did Musa alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam rule? I forgot.
Musa or Dawud alayhi salam? Dawud. I think it's around 70.
70.
70 only. It wasn't very long. So Dawud alayhi salam was around 30. And I think it's like 40 for Sulaiman alayhi salam. I'll double check with that, inshallah ta'ala. It wasn't like hundreds and hundreds of years. No, not at all. Yeah. Yeah. At the end, we'll make dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Anta salam, wa minka salam, tabrakta ya dhul jalali wal ikram. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to accept this time for us in studying the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, put in a scale of hasanat and yawm al-qiyamah. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive us for our wrongdoings and enter us in your Jannah, Kareem Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bless our brothers and sisters in the lands of Palestine. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, free them of their oppression. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect their lives. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamul mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless you guys. We'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.